Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, I wanted to look at this article that I actually found actually came out today. I'm actually current. So I want to go ahead and read this. This is apparently an advice column that has to do with different questions. And today's question is: my fat shaming mom won't support my body acceptance journey. So I want to go ahead and read this article because M. Clarkson, the writer for this, is a fat acceptance person. And I want to go ahead and get into this both because I think it's interesting and because I think it's unethical and I think it needs to be pushed back upon. So let's go ahead and read this together, okay? Metro's agony aunt M. Clarkson is here to sort out all your problems. Let me go ahead and I'm going to take the picture off just because I don't want it to be glitchy as a distraction, okay? So I'm still here, I promise. Okay. Metro's agony aunt M. Clarkson is here to sort all your problems. This week, she's handing down sage guidance on fat shaming moms, Hindu anxiety, and how to deal when your baby won't sleep and you resent your partner. Okay, so we're going to just talk about the fat one. Dear M, my mom is really unsupportive with my body acceptance journey. I think it's mainly with me sharing it online and not understanding why I do it. I do think that some of the reason may be that she knows how much she has contributed to me feeling the way I do about my body for all these years. When I was at the height of my ED and lost a lot of weight, she told me how she used to mutter fat shaming things when I annoyed her or was naughty. As you can imagine, no matter my size at the time, this has impacted me dramatically as it's all I can hear her saying now that I have gained weight. Recently at a wedding, when I had family friends tell me how proud they are of me and what I share online, my mom rolled her eyes. I honestly could not imagine not being proud of my child when someone is telling them that they're inspirational. I haven't addressed this with her as I don't know how to bring it up. So I find it interesting just because I think that this person sounds incredibly young. You know, at the utmost oldest, they'd have to be college age. But if not, then they're high school or even younger. So I find it interesting that this person is responding to this. But I guess I don't know if I would give a response to this myself just because it's like people have their own family issues. And I don't know. I just think this is weird. But we're going to go ahead and see what she has to say. Okay. I'm really proud of you. And I'm sorry that your mom isn't, at least outwardly. But I think you've hit the nail on the head as to why that is. By you sharing your journey, there is this massive public acknowledgement of the part that she played in it. I think what you are doing is holding up a big mirror to her and her behavior, and I suspect she has feelings of shame and regret, and those are making her act in a defensive and not necessarily kind way. So, I need to go ahead and just push back a little bit here. I think it could be possible that the mom just simply doesn't understand being online. The mom doesn't understand being a fat activist or, making these kinds of posts. The mom, obviously, like most people, sees how unhealthy it is to be overweight and doesn't understand why her daughter is doing this or why this is even popular at all. I think that there's that element of it. I think that there's also the element of it's probably, I don't know, it's probably a little bit embarrassing. I think that within fat acceptance circles, there is this idea that being fat and proud and all this stuff is so amazing and so wonderful, but they tend to forget that they're in an echo chamber and that outside of the echo chamber, it is really, really cringy and actually quite unpopular. And I think that there are a lot of people that pretend to like it or pretend that they agree when they don't, which I should probably make a video about at some point. There are a lot of pretenders. I actually had a comment a while back on my channel where somebody asked me, why do you think thin people support fat acceptance so often? And I think a large part of it is that a lot of them pretend to. They don't actually believe it. And the other part of it is I think that a lot of thin people, they say that because they feel very judged in their lives and they feel like they're always trying to live up to something. And so for them, it's kind of a fantasy in seeing somebody else not do that. It's kind of like when people that don't really want to eat are watching a mukbang. It's like a wish fulfillment fantasy for them at somebody else's expense, quite literally, to their health and well-being. So that would be my answer. I've been thinking about that comment a lot. So I just wanted to respond to that. But anyways, let's continue. This does not mean that you should stop. On the contrary. Also, by the way, this picture is the columnist. So again, she's not super big or anything, right? So this totally does have to do with this. So anyways, let's continue here. This does not mean that you should stop. On the contrary, I hope you continue to shout it from the rooftops. This is how we break the cycle and ensure that future generations feel they have permission to love themselves at any size. And I'm truly sorry that you didn't grow up in an environment where you felt that you could, that your mom made that environment. What she did was cruel, and I don't want to excuse it because it's an awful thing to do to your child. So I would say that what is more awful is enabling a child to become massively obese, either through ignorance or neglect. I think that that is actually much more cruel. You know, even if it's unintentional, obesity, morbid obesity, super morbid obesity are horrible to go through, especially as a child and especially as a teenager in your emergent adulthood years. It gives you a feeling of having an old body with a young mind. It's not a good combination at all. It's quite tragic, to be honest. And I think that it's worse to set up your kids to be in that situation. Now, again, it is generational, and there's a lot of times where parents, they were set up to be that way by their parents, and it kind of goes on and on. And it is difficult to break a cycle, but I think that's a much more important cycle to break, not this idea of accepting being fat. I don't think that that's okay. You know, I love the way that they're framing this as it's a permission to love themselves. Yeah, loving yourself means taking care of your body. That's a huge part of loving yourself. So the gaslighting is not fooling me, but I worry that it's fooling this young person that could be reading this. It's awful. All I can say is that your mom must be harboring a lot of hate towards herself, if that is how she can speak to her own daughter. Nobody comfortable in themselves would do that, and it sounds like she's one of many women who have been genuinely taught to fear fatness, who believed it would make them unlovable and therefore unsuccessful. I would say that this is very much, let me just put it to you this way. I don't have kids, but I doubt that the person writing this has kids, because I feel that when you have kids, you want your kids to do better than you, typically. You want your kids to basically go where you never went. Like if I were to ever have kids, through who knows how, but if I were to ever have kids, I would never want them to be fat. I would never want them to go through the things that I've gone through. That is a cycle that I would want to break within my family line. And I would want them to run where I could solely walk, because that's a typical response and a typical thing when you have kids. Now, it's also typical to be disappointed with your kids or they don't live up to certain things, and that I think happens to pretty much any parent for whatever reason. But I would just say that I think it could also be out of love for her daughter that she's concerned about her weight. It's not always just self-hatred. I think that that's very, I don't know. I don't even know what the goal is. I don't think it's good to try to sow division in families and stuff. And I feel like that's what that's doing. I think it's really nasty. The anti-fat propaganda machine has been exhaustive and relentless, and it has annihilated the confidence and rationale of millions of people. I just need you to know that your mom's behavior throughout your childhood and reaction to your healing journey says a lot more about her than it does about you. In fact, it says nothing about you and everything about her, and what a tragic admission. One that I want you to hold front and center of your mind if you decide to bring this up with her. So I feel like this paragraph is a lot of kind of flowery language, and I feel like she's trying to act like she's saying something kind of deep, but she really isn't. I think that there is a lot of toxic diet culture and a lot of things that have to do with, everything being based on appearance and having the most perfect look and this and that and dressing the best and doing this and everything's the best, the best, the best. I can agree that a lot of that is kind of BS. But there is no BS when it comes to having a healthy BMI and being within a healthy weight range. That's not BS. That's ideal, and it's also attainable. And you should work towards it because that's how you're going to live the longest. You're going to have the highest quality of life that you can. You're going to be as attractive as you can be, without being unhealthy, for example. And ultimately happier, as people forget, but your obesity does affect your mental health, and it makes you depressed through hypothyroidism, which I talk a lot about on this channel, just because I want people to be aware. So yes, your mental health is completely linked to your obesity, and you will not be happy if you are obese. You can pretend that you're happy, you can try to force it, but we all know, especially those of us that are super morbidly obese and that have been very fat, we all know that when the silence comes at night and you're struggling to sleep properly, you're struggling to breathe, when you can't get good temperature regulation, when you're too hot or too cold, when you're sweating or you're having this or that, whatever it is, it strikes. We all know that you're love and light and totally happy until you take a shower and you look in the mirror and you see how you really look and it hits you. We all know that you're feeling great until somebody takes a picture without your permission and then you happen to see it from an angle you usually don't see yourself and you see how big you really are. We all know what that is. And to me, it's not living in truth. And it doesn't have to be that way. It absolutely does not have to be that way. Get your eating under control. If you have an actual BED, then you need to figure it out. Because I can assure you that whatever ED you may have had, you may have just transferred it to something else. You should not be gaining massive weight after getting over a restrictive ED. That's not actual recovery. So let's continue. This would probably be better advice than what this woman is giving. I wasn't even trying to give advice, but here we are. Jeez. She is a hurt woman who has hurt you because she didn't know what else to do. It's easy to be angry with her, but perhaps more effective if you can find a way to pity her. So that's really interesting. So I find it really interesting how a lot of the arguments within fat acceptance, they always act as if they are trying to break shame and break judgment, but it's never about that. It's only ever about shifting blame, shifting judgment, shifting the holier than thou attitude against someone else. It's not about getting rid of it. I've said on this channel a lot, I want to essentially abolish the hierarchy of bodies because I want to work towards a world where it's easier to be in an ideal BMI. And then this whole hierarchy of whatever can go away. And we can just not think about it anymore. And we can just not care about it anymore. And we don't have to deal with the issue of obesity. I want to get it to the point where it's similar to smoking, where it just isn't as relevant. And I think that that's totally doable. And I want to work to get that to happen because I want the hierarchy to be gone, because I just want everybody to be healthy, at least in this way that is attainable, because it is. That's what I want. So I don't, I'm not pushing for all this other stuff, but fat acceptance is only pushing to replace the body hierarchy with an inverted version of it, where the fatter you are, the more you deserve, basically. And I don't agree with that at all. That's what I took from that sentence. Pity your mom, so view yourself as above her. Wow. That way you're more likely to have a conversation rather than a fight. Is it going to be a conversation, or is it going to be you're dictating your way onto another person? Because that's what they would advocate for, even though they act as if they don't, which is one of the things about this movement that I cannot stand the most. Given her reaction to your online work, I think you can expect defensiveness, so maybe writing a letter would be easier. If it's important to you to get this all out on the table, then I think it'll need to be gentle if it's going to get you anywhere. But if you don't think you can face it right now, that's okay too. You don't need to bring this up. This is not your responsibility, and you don't need her blessing. You're doing brilliantly. Don't let her story be yours, and don't let her pain be your pain either. Break the cycle. Super interesting. So I think that's it for this article. I'm just going to go back up. I'm just going to show her face too for a second. Then we're going to go back up to the top. And we are going to get me back on here, and I'm going to say my final thoughts. So basically, I think that this is unethical, for one. Like, depending on how young this person is, if this person is like 17, like if this person is a minor that wrote this, I think this is very, very unethical. I think it's super unethical to try to build a wedge between a minor and their parent. I think it's also extremely unethical to pressure a minor to be unhealthy. I think it's really wrong. And I think what would have been better advice, if I were to give advice, would be to focus the conversation on health instead, and not so much on appearance, because ultimately that's what matters most. And I would be horrified if this young woman, if she got to the age that I am and she had severe health issues, or if she didn't even make it to the age that I am, because she took this to a whole other level, because she loved herself into eating herself to an early grave. I think that it's really important to steer younger people away from that, because it's not okay. I would never, ever encourage a young person to give up their quality of life, to shorten their life drastically, to embrace mental health issues, depression, inability to make relationships work because you become too combative and you fight too much. I would steer young people away from a life of struggling with money for most fat people, because you spend too much money on food. It's a huge financial issue. So at the very least, you're going to take a huge L financially, especially in today's economy. I would steer a young person away from being uncomfortable in your body all the time, having, any of the social issues that are involved with being obese, because they're not necessary, because you don't have to be obese. So, any of the social stigmas and social problems and dating issues and any of this stuff, anything, I would steer a young person away from that, because you don't get a gold star because you suffer with being fat. You don't get a prize for doing it. You don't win the pain Olympics because you were the most miserable person with a smile on your face. At the end of the day, preventing it from getting worse is important. At the end of the day, getting it together if it's gotten bad is important. That's the facts. There's no reason to wait. There's no reason to do anything. Just get better. That would be my advice. And I would just say, don't try to live up to an unattainable standard. If your weight is in a healthy range, if your body fat percentage is within a healthy range, that's fine. Then you're fine. You don't owe anybody anything besides that, because you're going to live longer. You're going to be fine. As long as nothing bad happens to you, if that makes any sense. You're going to prevent as much illnesses and disease as you can. And that's what's important. And I think other things will fall into place. And I would ultimately tell this person that I want you to turn it around, because I don't want you to have to think about your health every day like I have. I don't want you to have to do that at a young age. I think you should be able to celebrate the prime of your life and live it and do all the things that I couldn't, in my late 20s, early 30s. I want her to do all that. That's what I would say. So I think that would be a lot better of advice. But, I guess go ahead and pick a fight with your mom and create a wedge issue and think that you're better than her and just judge everybody that disagrees with you, I guess. Because I'm sure you're really happy. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts down below. And yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. Let's do this. Talk soon. Bye, you guys.